Hello, everybody. My name is Anton. Been doing Ruby for what, 15-ish years, and still loving it, and loving it more every day. So sharing love here. So today, I have my slides. I don't have slides, so we're gonna do something dangerous. We're gonna do live coding on the stage. So it's been a while, so maybe we'll try something different. So today I want to all of us go through and building a form, a Rails form, but with all of the bells and whistles, and kind of show you how to build very dynamic, interactive, pretty much everything you want. We're gonna do it together step by step. Ask questions if you don't understand something. That's the whole point. If you lose it halfway, you're not gonna catch up. Sorry. So yeah, but we're doing it step by step, right? So it's kind of more like interactive stuff, throw questions, comments, jokes. Welcome. Cool. So to get us started, I have like a basic boilerplate just to save us some time. I'll show you what it is, and then we'll start changing it, right? So think of we have an index page, right? Let's say should I zoom it? If you let me know. What did you say? Moga? Oh, okay. So we have like a very basic boilerplate form. So I have like 3 sections here. So which we will I'll touch later. But yeah, we have like actions. Think of the actions like navbar or some sidebar. Just this stuff that outside the form, right? So then we have our form, and then we have our results, right? So that's kind of like roughly like basic structure. And also I've included like a timestamps when that's rendered. So later we will use it just to see when it's been changed, right? So it's like, because I'm not putting like real data, just to kind of keep it as minimal as possible. So on the form, we have a country select. So that's all of the countries. This one is state select, but it's empty, as you can see, it's broken. And this is just a text box, but this is just also renders timestamp as a text, so it's actually form data. And results is the same, timestamp, and also the params of the form, so we can see what is actually being like processed or should be processed as a result. Make sense? Cool. So also I did this awesome CSS animation. So when it's rendered, it flashes red. So then we can see what's changing. But yeah, we'll get to that. On the backend side, we'll make it larger. They're gonna make it move this thing. Oh, no, sorry, this thing. All right. So quickly, just on the backend, let's start with controller. Nothing too fancy. So we have index, new, and create, which we'll touch later. But let's focus on index. So you'll be just rendering form or creating form object. I will show you later. And then we just like rendering, index view for HTML, and text, just like rendering some text, which is params. And if you look at the form object, again, it's I'm using a library called active interaction, larger. Cool. Yep. So this is just a gem I'm using. Form object could be active record, doesn't really matter, but it literally has like 3 fields. Execute is just like where the form does stuff. Like currently we don't do anything, so it's just empty. And I have 2 methods, which is country options and state options, and this is for the select box that we will render. Right? Make sense? Following so far so good? And if you look at the index HTML, so that's our actions bar. So we have a link, we have a timestamp, nothing like too difficult here. So the form, same. So we have, I'll put it like form wrapper. Again, I'll show you later why. So yeah, timestamp, form, passing the form object, URL is the user's path. We making it as a get request because we want to render it. And then the same, we're going to select for the country, and we're passing those options. Select for the state, we're passing those options, and the text field. Yep, does that make sense for? Cool. So pretty basic, right? And results, same stuff. And just like div with the results, and timestamp, and just like passing the params. So yeah, so that's like as basic as we can get. Cool. So I think that's the foundation. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. So our goal is to change this select when this select changes, right? So it's kind of dependent select. So for example, if I'll click, let's say, United Arab Emirates, so it's still nothing. But if I click search, it populates with the states of that country. And that's because this state is going to need to know what the country we selected, and so we kind of those two dependent fields. And okay, how can we make it work? So, any ideas? JavaScript. Yes, let's write in JavaScript. All right, I have some notes here. All right, so currently, as you can see, form works when you select and click search. It does change it, right? So let's just do that automatically. So we don't need to click search when we do it. So let's add, I don't refresh. Oh yeah, that's been done. All right. So let's add some JavaScript. Thank you, Toby. So the simplest we will only write technically 2 lines of JavaScript today. With a bit of boilerplate, but 2 lines, right? So we can count. So I have this stimulus controller. So, and all it does is we have a submit action, and all it does is submits a form. That's all the JavaScript we need. So let's hook it up. So we will put HTML. Yeah. So we put data controller, and we do it remote click. Does anybody have any questions? What is going on here? Please ask while we're typing. Great question.
What is remote click?
Yeah, so remote click is a stimulus controller. We can call it whatever, right? It's just a controller that we defined, and that's what it is. It has one method on it called submit, and all it does, it calls element submit request submit.
So that name comes from
What line?
yes.
Yeah. So it's a convention in Rails or Stimulus. So the name of the file is remote click. Yep. Cool. Any more questions? So pretty much the way we use it. So on the form object, we define data controller remote click. Do we spell it like this? Do we spell it like this? I don't remember. No, I think we spell it with a dash. Cool. And then on the country, we say on change, call this action. So if we did it correctly and we refresh this form, so when we change this country, it submits the form, right? So now we don't need to click the button. So this is the first step, and you can see everything flashes red. So it means the whole thing like re-renders ultimately. Does it make sense? So far, so good? Cool.
Remind me what request submit does.
I was looking at that today as well. So submit is just our method name. We can call it whatever.
Oh, but isn't there a DOM method?
There is I think there's a DOM method.
Yeah.
I don't know the difference, so you should check later and tell us next week or next month. Yeah, request submit works. Let's leave it at that. Cool. So pretty much, yeah. Again, where we are. So we change. It submits the form. Cool. But again, we don't want to submit the whole thing, and it's kind of like the problem is when you do this, if you scroll, you change it, it jumps back because again, it re-renders the whole page. It's could be better. Cool. So let's check my notes. All right. So let's actually separate the kind of refresh of the form from the refresh of the results, because when we click this search button, results change as well. So we let's separate those two, right? So we already have I'm just checking my notes. Cool. All right, I'll just copy this stuff. So this is the coolest part that I've discovered how to do hotwire stimulus stuff, and it's actually also HTML. So I will walk you through, but it's actually pretty cool. So the mind-blowing thing is each form can have multiple buttons, and each button can have multiple configurations, where to submit, how to submit, all of other things. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna create a second button on the form. We're just gonna put it under, yeah, we call it update form, but it actually doesn't matter because we can just like hide that button, so it's actually nobody can see it. But the idea is, yeah, so we'll have two buttons. So one button will submit and update the results, and the second button will submit and update the form itself. Cool? So how are we gonna do that? So okay, we've added the button, right? So we can just clear this thing for now. So, and refresh that. So now it submits the form, the same stuff. Cool, right. So this is where the second line of the JavaScript comes in. So now we define the second action on the stimulus controller, which we call click. And all it does, in stimulus, you can define like targets, like target element. And it's just like some convenience methods on the stimulus controller. So we define like a clicker target. So it's literally the stimulus controller can have one target element. And on that click action, we just call click on that element. That's all it is. Right? Makes sense? So let's see how it works in practice, and you'll probably make more sense. So we still have our remote click stimulus controller here, but instead of submit, we're going to call click. What we're going to click? We're going to click this button. So that's how we define it, data remote click target clicker. Right? So it's pretty much what it says. When this form changes, call this click something, and what we're going to click? We're going to click this button. Right? So it's kind of like you can see how it's all kind of connects. So this is the first step, right? So it's kind of, we're still submitting the form, nothing really changed. So this is the kind of the first part. The second part is to use turbo frames, right? So turbo frames is this new feature that Rails, or Hotwire, and part of the Rails, which is default, came, what, I don't know, a couple of years ago? Yeah. And it's actually pretty simple, but also complicated, but also very cool. So that's what we're going to utilize. So first of all, we will, let me check my notes. Yeah. Okay. So what we need to do, we will need to add a turboframe tag. So there's a helper in Rails called turboframe tag. And we need to give it a name, right? So in this case, we'll give it a name form update. And we'll get back to this part. So turboframe, you think of it as it's a, like, I don't know, part of the page that you can refer to later, and it has some special properties. That's ultimately what it is. So when,
Kind of like an iframe?
it's like an iframe and very similar to iframe to the way it behaves, but it's just like based on the JavaScript, right? So pretty much when we click the button, we want to say like, hey, actually, when you send the request, pass this turboframe reference that we need, right? So we're gonna pass the turboframe name as part of the submit. So this server kind of knows like, actually that's the turboframe. So it's kind of we kind of reference a specific name. So pretty much what the way Hotwire works, we don't want to update the full page. We want just update this frame on the page. And that's what just definition of the name, right? So if we, and then in this kind of block, we can do other stuff, but just to kind of speed it up, so we can call any kind of action, anything in this side turboframe. We can render, whatever. But what we need, we'll ultimately need to update the form, right? So this is the kind of jumping here, where TurboStream comes in. So let me just do it, and then I'll explain how it works. So, so we're gonna render the form, but we're gonna capture it into variable, right? So capture is a Rails helper. All it does is like, hey, you render this thing, but also save it as a variable. So pretty much we just rendering the whole thing as we did, but we're also saving it into the form HTML variable. And that way we can reference over here. So in the turbo frame, we can also use turbo stream. And turbo stream, think of it as the a little, like it's a little JavaScript. It's under the hood it is, but think of it as the little JavaScript action to do something, right? So, and think of it, okay, turbo stream is like, hey, we want to update certain element on the page. That's what it says. Okay, what element do we want to update? We want to update this element with ID form wrapper. So, and that's our form wrapper over here. So that's the element. And okay, so it's like, okay, cool. When you render it, update this div with ID form wrapper. And what do you want to update it with? Update it with this HTML. All right. So far, so good. I've said a lot of things. So let's see if it works, first of all. Cool. So now if I press update form, you can see only form updates. So, and if we inspect network, so this is another cool update form. Boop. Can I make it larger? I can. So when browser sends a request to the server, it actually attaches header turbo frame and passes our name with it. So actually our server also knows what part of the page we need to render and can do its own stuff. And then when the request comes in, browser takes the request, is like, actually don't need to update the full page, I just need to update that particular element, and it just copies that element into the page. So that's why when we do the full send the request, we're only updating part of the page. Cool.
Can you show the response on that response?
Yep.
What does this say?
So response is actually, it's a full page render as you normally would render the full page. But it doesn't put the full page back. It only takes this element that we tell them to render. And there are other ways how to customize the response as well, because again, if you're replacing single elements, you don't really need to render stuff outside it, and you can also optimize it. I think by default Rails doesn't render layout, because again, you don't need layout, because again, you're replacing part of the page, and you can also customize, whatever you want to render. But ultimately, as long as you render that element with that ID, you're fine. Yeah, any more questions? Does it make sense? So pretty much, again, walk again. So we have a button which tells submit the form, but submit with the turbo frame. And turbo frame, it says like, yep, when we're updating the page, we updating this element with this HTML. Cool. All right. Let's move on. So, but we have a problem, guys. The problem is this link, because now we're updating it, but this form is not updating the parameters of the URL, because if you look at this URL, we're taking the params and just putting that into URL. So pretty much we can change all the things here. We can update it, we can save it. So it updates here. Yeah, that's a good example there. But this link is not updated, because this link depends on what we select. Okay, so how can we update that link which is outside the form? So we need to update the form, but also update something on outside the form, right? So that's kind of okay. So the answer is more turbo stream. So it's literally, we can update different parts of the page as we need. So let's do that. So let's pretty much do exactly the same. So let's render that into a variable. So let's call it actions HTML, as do capture do. And that way, when we are, I think we can do that. Now I'm just like already from wrapper. Yeah, all we needed to give it a name. So we give it the name actions wrapper. And cool. Actions wrapper, update. Cool. So that should work. Let's try that. Nope. What are we missing? Yes, we need to get refreshed. Thank you. Boom. Thank you. That's live coding. So yeah, as you can see, now we can update different parts of the page on demand at wish, however you want. So that's kind of like, it's very simple, but it gives you a lot of power to make page dynamic. And as you can see, it's like very little change to your template. And it's just like, hey, this is the different actions, all you need to do. Cool. So, but let's, when we submit, we still refresh the full page. So let's fix that. Now we want to, when we click search, to update the results only. So
Was the question response still the same? But now it's just
good question. So the question is the request response the same and not picking up two? So request response is the same, yes. We're only looking for this element, form update, form tag, and wherever is inside, it will be pretty much rendered on the page, right? And because turbo streams, they rendered and then executed and removed, so literally it's empty when it's rendered, but it's ultimately turbo stream is executing JavaScript to do something on the page. So it's pretty much, yeah, we're still targeting single turbo frame to form update, but we can do whatever here. Like we can just render text if you want, because again, it's just element on the page. So as you can see, and it's just rendering at the bottom and updating over here, because it's just element on the page, which has no content. And the turbo stream is the JavaScript kind of version, which is not rendered. Yep. I'm just looking at the when I get a nod. Not yet, not yet.
Finish in the
Yep.
inspector.
Yep.
Show the response and what the turbo stream injects into.
Well, it's a normal form response. It's not. That's the thing I even need to update. It's a normal form request response. It's not different from actual form response. The only difference it gets
Isn't in the response. Isn't inside the
Yep.
turbo frame. Hasn't it serialized the content's been replaced again?
serialize the content that will be replaced in the turbo frame.
Yeah.
Well, both. That's the thing. Like even the original render of the page, first one, also has the turbo frame in it. It's just hidden. It's empty. It's pretty much the first time we render. Every time we submit, the page contents is always we render the whole page again. There is literally no difference. It's like render this page, and then let's merge them together. That's pretty much what's happening. But the way we're merging new page to the old page, we're just picking, hey, don't merge everything, just merge this single element, which is turbo frame. But again, because it's virtual, inside the turbo frame, we have a bit of JavaScript, those turbo streams, and turbo streams say.
Where's that for the JavaScript?
Yeah. So yeah, good question. So can we? No, we can't. Yeah, we need to scroll it. And we can see the button. So yeah, turbo stream. Yeah. So turbo stream is just the element, like HTML element called turbo stream. It says actually, yeah, you can just like, yes, see it here.
A web component. So it's a custom element which
Yep.
serves as a web component, and all the JavaScript is within this web component. Actions to update the DOM are sort of embedded within this web component. So it's declarative in that you just write turbo stream with the action update, and then the web component underneath knows what to do to the DOM with these attributes that you declare in just plain HTML.
What he said, yes. Did everybody get it? So it's a custom web component element called turbo stream.
And the contents of that element is your actions bar again, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So you can see turbo element, action, update, target stuff. So it's a custom element, and inside of it, if you scroll, it has this template tag, and that's this HTML that we will kind of. It's pretty much we say like, hey, update ID. This is the template we want to update you with. Cool. Yeah. So that's turbo streams. Yeah, to be specific. Cool. Any more questions? Yes.
So currently for your response for your controllers, it will return the full page.
Mhm.
Right?
Yep.
But actually you only need partial of that.
Correct. Yeah.
So then for your controller, can you just return the partial?
Yes, you can. You can be as granular as you want, but the beauty of this, as you see, like we did 0 changes to our controller. We did like 3 lines changes to our views. So that's why you can get this dynamic form.
In production, because currently you are transporting the whole page.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Probably a little bit waste for the traffic.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, if we use this in production, should we just return the partial? We
So-
really need.
Yes, you can. Again, you can render wherever you want, however you want on the server. It's more just takes you more effort. I will. In my phone disconnected. Yeah, I'm gonna jump back.
So in the
Sorry,
sorry.
just to finish. Yeah, so you can do that partial updates. You can do wherever you want. Yes, it just requires more code, more complexity, and usually it's just the simple solution is just like it's quick, takes like 2 minutes. It's kind of good enough, and yeah, that's yeah.
So what I was going to say is that depending on how.
Hello.
Yep.
So what I was going to say is that depending on how you choose to sort of build the interactivity, you can do what we're doing here, which is just rendering the whole page and like letting Turbo automatically replace the little parts that you want.
Mhm.
But with other strategies, you can be more surgical and just return even less things from your response in the server.
Yep.
In this way, you just don't have to think a lot about what you want to replace. You just send everything and you let Turbo do the smarts. But you can also go and just return a couple of Turbo streams and the response will be super small.
Yeah.
So it just depends on how specific you want to be. And the more specific you are, it's usually more like mental load to maintain.
Mhm.
So if you can start by just doing the whole page and just keeping like full page updates, doing stuff, it ends up being like a little bit easier on you in the future. And then if you need something much more surgical, much more complicated, then you start doing those little like mini turbo streams where the response is smaller, but your effort in trying to sort of keep everything in track is higher.
Yep. Pretty much. Yeah. Any more? Yep. Question there.
Yep. So probably a broader Turbo question.
Mhm.
Does Turbo update the query parameters?
We will get to that. Good question. By default, when we submit as the Ajax request, it doesn't, but we will fix that. Yeah, we will get back to that. Any more questions before we move? All right, cool. Well, let's, like I mentioned, let's update the results, which is also fairly easy, but very similar, and you can see this how it works. So pretty much we'll find our search button now, and we will do the same data turbo frame. So it means, again, when we submit the form, we want to update the results, and we call it results update. And then we'll add a turbo frame tag called results update. And then we will do pretty much exactly the same. So we already have our, no, we need results. So we'll wrap results in container. So let's say results wrapper. Yeah, that will do. So results HTML, capture, do. Boop. And then here we can just copy this thing, move it here, boom, results wrapper, boom. All right, and that should be it. Let's test it. So I'm going to search it. Cool. So now we did exactly the same, but for the other button. So let's work it again. So I've added data turbo frame. We can add this element on the form itself because that's will be default submission, but we just did it on the button. And it's the same. It's like, hey, when you submit in the form, attach this, render it, update only turbo frame when response come back. Cool. And it renders the full page and then looks this turbo frame name. Cool. And what do we need to render here? Okay, we just updating the div tag with this HTML. So, and that's, yeah, and just updating these results. As you can see again, timestamp, it's just changing one element on the page. Cool. All right. So we've done that, actions, we've done actions already. There is another cool thing which I've discovered. Yeah, let's do that. So this is how I would, let's say we want, so we have a form, right? And it has some parameters, but I want to link with those parameters like in here, like I want to link to users.txt or CSV file, but I want to pass the same parameters in the URL, right? So one option is to, create a link to and pass all of those parameters from the form. That's one way, and that's pretty much how I used to do it. But then I discovered even a better way, and it's more like, HTML standard. So like I mentioned, you can have many buttons to a form, and you can also have buttons that outside the form, which submit the form. I was like, right? And then I've checked the HTML specification. It's true, you can do that. So there is an attribute called form, and you just pass the ID of the form that you want to submit, even though, and that button could be anywhere. So that's like, okay, cool. Now we can have the submitted button on the sidebar, wherever, doesn't matter. Yeah, it's just gonna do exactly the same as it submits the form, but with a different thing. But another cool thing, as part of the HTML, you can actually not just point the form, you can also say like, hey, actually submit this form, but submit it to a different URL. And this is the URL I want you to submit this form. And as you can see, we are submitting the form to the same user's path, but we're passing the different format. In this case, it's TXT. So it's kind of like, okay, so now we're using the same form, same params, but rewriting the definition. And you can change like form method, actions is like, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. So in that way, we don't need to change the full URL like we do here. We just reuse the form that we already have and generate the CSV file straight from the form that you already have there. So let's see if it works. I have some old code here. So let's do that. So updating. Oh yeah, didn't render the button. Where's the button? What? No. What's missing? No. I see the problem. Because we are re-rendering, let's just put it here. Cool. So if we change some parameters and don't click any button, but then we click this button and nothing works, cool. Again, I told it, yeah. Why it didn't work? We didn't tell we didn't give ID to the form. So we just need to do that. Rails generates some default one, but it's just more clear. We just define, so we just pass ID index form to, let's call it my form actually. It's more clear, it's my form. Cool, so that's all it takes. We just give an ID, and here it says, hey, click button, this is form, this is the URL, and cool, let's try that. So we're gonna be update to FU. Oh, yeah, and you can see it's actually clicked, we click the button, submit the form to the text, but it passed the correct parameters. Yeah, I know it could be better state, but yeah. All right, does it make sense? Who's amazed? Yeah, oh yeah, yes, we got him back.
Brendan.
No. He
Always got something.
He's just excited. It's like, cool. So yeah, and again, this little thing that you can have buttons outside, it's like, again, it's just like such a big, game changer when discovered. So, but yeah, going back to the earlier questions with the URLs, right? So if we clear our URLs and just do those users and we update the form, you can see URL doesn't change. So we kind of lost our permanent URLs when we changed the form, which is not great. And if we click search, like see, it's all changes, but URL doesn't change. Not good. So easy fix there. We go to the form So this is because when the form submits, by default, it's submitted through Hotwire or Turbo. And yeah, by default, it's just done as an AJAX. But we can tell it explicitly, hey, you updating it as this kind of as an AJAX, but we also want to update the URL, right? So as part of it, we can do on the form data turbo action, turbo action. And we can just define the turbo, one of the options, which either advance or replace. So advance is adding each submission as a new page, and replace is just rewriting existing URL to the new one. It's pretty much only difference if you go back button. Do you want single click and go to whatever page before, or do you want to keep changing to the every time you change the form, if that makes sense? So let's say we call it advance. And this is just like basic turbo configuration. So we're not doing anything different. So yeah, so if you'll search, now it's changing the URL of the form. So, and if you change again the country, click search, it changes the parameters there. So yeah, and now we got our URLs back. Does it make sense? Do you have any questions? I promise I'm almost there. So yeah, that's kind of the index form, right? So we can re-render different parts of the pages. We can control how we render. We can be as granular as we want. Cool stuff. But I just want to show pretty much exactly what we did, but in slightly different context, just to get to show you where it's very powerful. So because we're working on the index page, I think this CSV is very common, like, let's say in my project, because you want a filter, but also have a button to export it as CSV. But also another common case, let's say we are creating a user. So we have a new user form, right? And in this case, we have exactly the same requirements. We have two selects, and each select dependent on other select. But in this case, we have two different paths. In a way, one is we need to update, and other one we need to submit to create a user. And they are, again, like two different. So, but it's the same logic. So let's just quickly walk through. So on the new action, exactly the same. We just create a form object, pass it to the view. Create, we're doing nothing, but we're just keeping it there as a placeholder. And if you look at the new action, so it's pretty much exactly the same example. So just copy it. We have exactly this same button, but as you can see, it's hidden here. So it's there, but you don't know it's there. And yeah, it's here, and it's exactly the same. From clicker, like I mentioned, we can override not just URL of the form, but also the method. So in this case, pretty much the pattern that I'm using, and it's works really great. When you're creating a user, for the form, you re-render the new action, but when you're submitting the create action, right? So that's why you can, if you're updating the form, you just use the. So that's why for the pre-render, I'm using new user path with the get method, but for the form, it's the default users, and by default, it will be post request. Yeah, and that's in this case, I have this example for this is the full page refresh. So it refreshes the whole form, but we can do exactly the same and do the partial. So as you can see, when I'm changing this, and this goes back to the earlier question, can we do partial updates? So yeah, in this case, I'm being granular and just re-rendering single element here. And yeah, and it pretty much if I'm no states in Antarctica. So, and when I'm creating the user, it just does the normal post request to the users. So yeah, and it pretty much that's super powerful, because yeah, you can control again where you render, how you render, re-render the new form. So yeah, so that sums it up. We have a question.
Yep, more than a question. How do you say this? Cautionary tale about this particular technique that you just showed at the end.
Mm-hmm.
It's very powerful, but you need to remember that Rails logs get requests differently than posts and puts and deletes. So if you submit a form using a get request, a get method, then it'll log every attribute that you have in your form, every value. And if there is sensitive data there, it'll be in your logs. So if you have a form, let's say username and password, and for some reason you do a get request with that, the user's name and password will be in your logs. So you gotta be very careful with that, especially if its parameters are not like obvious, like a password, because Rails does redact some of those. But for something that might not be as obviously easily redacted by Rails automatically, those will be in your logs.
Right.
So you gotta be careful with that. It's very powerful, and you can denial list some of those, but it's something to be very careful about when using this technique. But it's
Good point. And to add more, so yeah, Rails has a default sanitizer for all of the parameters, and there are default like password it will automatically remove. And you can add new fields, but yeah, if you're not aware, yeah, it will log stuff. Yeah, good point.
And everything along the way too. You've got a load balancer or a cloud front or something in front of it.
Oh, good point. Good point.
They get parameters in your logs.
Good point. Also, I forgot one more thing. There is another cautionary tale. Speaking of cautionary tale, this is HTML thing. It's not really Rails or JavaScript. But when you have multiple buttons to the form, and you are, let's say, in this text box, and you press enter, how does browser know what button to click? Now, a different button says, hey, this is a post request, this is get request, this is this URL, this is URL. What button browser chooses?
There's a default setting somewhere.
You can have a button that's typed submit, different button.
But you can have multiple types of it.
Yeah, okay.
The button that's attached to the parent element. Right?
Button attached to the parent element, to the form.
Yeah.
But there are multiple buttons. Like there's 3 buttons attached to the same form.
Yeah, but,
So when I click,
yeah,
It's not in the form, it's outside, in the other two.
yeah. So which one? The first one inside?
all of them, all of them.
All of them, but did they all 3 requests? You don't need a button of type submit, but you can have multiple, yes. Or you can have one, or you can have none. Yeah.
Well, you don't need a button to submit a form.
And you don't need a button as well, because correct.
There could be no buttons.
Yeah.
So,
So
is it the setting on the form itself?
no. So the answer is the first button in the HTML. Like, so we have our CSV button or text button first. It will actually submit this one.
Typical HTML.
Yeah, yeah. So pretty much if I press enter, it will submit that CSV thing as it does. Not what we want. Easy fix. Again, it's a thing you need to remember. So let's go to our index view. All we need to do is just to create another empty button just above our text button. So 4 buttons. We can hide it, display none.
Yes, this is the form.
So, and now if we refresh this and I press enter, then it will submit the invisible, and now it submits the full form, but yeah, we can change that. So yeah, just remember HTML. Yes, sorry, just one more. I thought it was important. Do we have one question there?
In the context of what you're doing, how do you know the difference between when you'd want it to just update the form and when you wanted to actually submit the form when someone hit enter? Do you validate the form and see if it's valid, then actually submit?
No, but it always submits the form.
So is an update form submit the same as an actual submission?
Yep.
How does it know when the form's complete and actually we need to go to a different page?
Well, that's the thing. Again, I'm using the get method for re-rendering. Let's say if again, going back to the user new, I think that's more, because again, index is always get, but user is new. So I'm using get a new user path to update the form itself. So that's why it's safe to do as many times as you want because you're just re-rendering the form ultimately. But when you're submitting, you go to the post. So you're changing the method of the form to the post, and you're changing the URL to the /users. So that's a CRUD, Rails CRUD. You have two paths. You look confused.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, because the way that you were sort of demonstrating was that essentially you could be doing things like saving the form as someone's moving along, right?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and in which case, if you had that situation where there would then be a distinction between I'm just saving the form versus submitting the form, and then you would need to know the difference when someone hits enter.
You can, again, because you can have different buttons, and you can attach different data to each button, and you can track it wherever it's on the server, and you can say like, I'm receiving the form, but it's actually save action rather than submit action. Or you can have a different URL for save versus the submit. So that's why you can even differentiate that. So yeah, there are many ways how you can do it. I don't think there's any like recommended or standard. It's just like, yeah, whatever makes sense.
I can answer the other question too. The difference between submit and request submit is submit submits the form regardless. Request submit is like pushing the submit button, so it will validate the form, and only if the form is valid does it submit.
To answer earlier question, yeah, cool. Any more final questions? Yes.
This one, just in case you haven't had.
How did you learn all this? I spent some time.
No, it's not working.
Your fingers on the button. I pressed it. Yeah.
Sorry. I spent a few days a while ago trying to learn Turbo, making an app, and the documentation was woeful. Like, how did you learn this?
I've discovered this form trick at the conference talk.
But like the whole of like Turbo.
A whole of it, it's years. Now, I've been using Turbo for years, and it just like slowly like discovering these patterns that I'm demonstrating to you. There's like the best patterns that I discovered I'm using daily. But yeah, it's just like, because yeah, I have this Turbo tool is like, I know it does a great thing, but how I can leverage more. And that's why it's just like learning from over the time, those little tricks, how to use it, how to better structure it. So yeah, it's just like, I don't know, just watching a lot of conference talks, doing it myself, struggling, doing it again, struggling. Yes. But I'm again still like I know many people are confused about turbo frames and turbo streams, and I'm like try to also today like reframe it as a different concepts. I don't think I did a good job, but once you get it, it's actually very simple concepts and they're very powerful. But you gotta really need to understand like how they work and how you can combine them. Because yeah, like literally like turbo stream, it's like, again, think of it as just like a JavaScript line that updates something on the page, and then you can place it anywhere on the page, and you can dynamically send it through WebSockets, and it updates the page. You can just like this. It's just literally it's a concept that works on its own. If you're just combining it with the turbo frame, which is like more element isolation, but yeah. All right. Try again. Come back. All right. Are we done? Yes, one more.
Just quickly, kind of a follow-on question.
Yes.
So what you've showed today is kind of using Turbo as like little sprinkles. In your Turbo journey, have you also used it to sort of create like a whole single-page app, something to try and rival a single-page app? And did you have a good experience with that? Are you showing this now because you kind of think this is the better use case for Turbo? Both?
I mean, single page app, mileage can vary depending how much single page do you need. I definitely start with this approach because it's simple. It's literally, a couple of minutes, boom, it's working. If there is more interactivity required, then yeah, you kind of like either go more granular page and more custom updates if you need to. But then if that's big, because that also becomes like more complicated the more you have it. And then again, if you see like, okay, the complexity is too high, then you would just like rewrite it in component, client-side component, or you can just write it most of that in stimulus controller. That's all another option. Personally, again, the project that I worked on, I'm yet to face that requirement when it's like turbo is not enough and it's like you need high interactivity, but it's also very project specific. So yeah, but most of the little things you can either write more stimulus controllers and that does the job, or turbo streams altogether and again does the job for like for very quickly, because rewriting it in single page app, that's another like more time requirement, and you need API. You need to re-architect the thing. So, but yeah, personally, that's been using that. Yeah, haven't had a problem yet. Cool. Thank you.